The government has been defending its proposed ban on live odds advertising during football matches. There will still be general gambling ads allowed during half-time, quarter-time breaks in the footy, but not any sort of promotion of live odds betting. This follows a lot of community concern about it, including on the Labor backbench as well. And some Labor MPs still want the government to go further and have a complete ban during any kids TV viewing hours at all. But the Minister, Stephen Conroy, this morning on Sky News, defending what they have done.
Barry O'Farrell is a complete hypocrite. Barry O'Farrell could do something about advertising around the grounds. He could do something about the sponsorship on the jerseys instead of calling on the federal government to go further than the massive jump we've made. We've banned live odds from the moment you run on the ground to the moment you walk off the ground. We've banned banner advertising. And all that we're allowing is gambling ads in the scheduled breaks of play, not when a try is scored or a goal's kicked in footy, when you're at half-time, quarter-time. So Barry O'Farrell needs to have a good look at himself.
Yeah, the Minister therefore responding to Barry O'Farrell, the New South Wales Premier, one of those who believes these measures should go further. Let's bring in our panel. Joining me here on the Sky News, in the Sky News Centre, Bruce Hawker, the former federal Labor campaigner and strategist, and in Canberra, Grahame Morris from Barton Deakin. Welcome to you both. I'm interested in your thoughts here. We saw the government, Bruce, go through all sorts of conniptions and political pain over the pokies issue that Andrew Wilkie demanded action on, and in the end we had a fairly watered down reform in the end. This time around it seems to have been a whole lot easier. Why?
Well, it was. I mean, I think the Wilkie factor was a very important one. They had to work through an arrangement which was going to suit him as well. I don't think there's...
And a commitment made in forming government.
Indeed, that they had to then work through. I think there was a lot of people in the western suburbs of Sydney, MPs, who were pretty concerned about how far those reforms could go, should go, and so forth. It was very controversial. In many ways, this is a real no-brainer. Anybody who watches sport on TV, just seeing all this information about betting odds coming up all the time, is going to be extremely irritated unless you're a professional punter.
Yeah, Grahame, that's the point here, isn't it? These ads often do get up the nose of a lot of sports fans. Pokies, though, don't touch them.
Yeah, look, I think that's true, David. The problem with the pokies and everything was you had the clubs, you had sporting clubs, you had football clubs, you had Woolworths, you had everyone and his dog involved in that one. Whereas this online gambling one, it's really one bloke, Waterhouse. He's got less than 1% of the market. But look, he's been a bit of a mug. He went overboard with the noise and the promotion. But David, I'm actually starting to get a bit uneasy about all this stuff. You know, you can't have a smoke, you can't gamble. Next will be alcohol, soft drinks, fast food and packaged desserts. And you think, well, hang on, where is all this going to stop? And I said to my kids in the car this morning, we were listening to all the programs about Waterhouse, and they're 14-year-old twins, and I said to them, look, do you reckon we ought to ban Waterhouse? And they said, no. And I said, why not? They said, Dad, because we're not stupid. And I think that's right. You know, people can sort it out for themselves. Yes, the ads are annoying, but, you know, the Prime Minister does more damage to Australian families than the Waterhouse generations could ever do.
Well, do you accept that free market point, I suppose, Bruce, that this is another layer of nanny state mentality?
Well, I think we should stop at packaged desserts. I think that's an appropriate place to draw the line. And it's good to hear that Graham's kids don't require any advice about where to put a bet on. But look, I think this was one where people thought, I think, with real certainty that they'd gone too far. I mean, you've just been bombarded with this stuff. I mean, we do regulate everything. You know, we've always had censorship of some shape and form in our television. We have regulatory bodies like FACS there and Free TV to make sure.
There's a whole bunch of stuff you can't show on TV, I think, for good reason.
It's not nanny state, it's just sensible.
And Grahame, the point here too isn't it, that it's annoying as much as enticing people to gamble.
Well, that's true, but what is the principle? You know, do you really pass laws for annoying things on television? In which case, the Prime Minister would be in awful trouble. You know, I don't mind if people
well, we'd all be in trouble.
Depending on your politics, some of us might be in trouble too.
I suspect I'd get shot by half the audience too. But what is the principle? You know, I can understand if there is proven damage by the water houses, but there hasn't been.
And this is the point. This is a good point, because the Productivity Commission, before they did anything on pokies, didn't the Productivity Commission we had nothing like that with this thing?
Well, no, and but
it was just the general vibe that people don't like it.
But I do think if there is an overwhelming view in the public that this thing's gone too far, and clearly that's the case, and as far as I can see, it's a pretty strong bipartisan view as well.
It is.
Then I think it's time for legislators to step in. It doesn't mean you're still not going to be able to see movies on the TV, and you can watch SBS and get any amount of.
I'm sure you'll still get ads for those packaged desserts for a while yet. Now I want to move on. The Prime Minister gave an interview to The Guardian Australia, which launched today, and was asked about whether she would serve a full term as a local MP, a backbench MP, should Labor lose the election. And it was a fairly vague response. The PM's office had to today clean that up by pointing out, yes, she will serve a full term. Bruce, what do you think? It's an inevitable question for Prime Ministers. John Howard used to get it a lot as well. Should she have seen this one coming?
Well, she probably needed to give a definitive response, and that finally came. And and I think it is appropriate for her to serve out the term, whether she wins or loses.
Why should an ex-Prime Minister have to serve a full 3 years on the backbench?
I was just looking back at some of the former Prime Ministers to see what sort of terms they served. People that were great public servants. John Howard, 33 years. Julia Gillard served 15 years so far.
But John Howard's end came quite cleanly, didn't it, in losing his own seat. He didn't have to serve 3 years as the member for Bennelong.
Absolutely true. Billy Hughes served 51 years. He was in Parliament from 1901 to 1952.
Longer than Philip Ruddock.
Yeah, not just. And Menzies served for 32 years. So there was a time when there was an expectation that if you were a politician, you're a true leader, then you would serve virtually your entire life, adult life, in politics. You'd certainly see it out.
Well, times have changed, Grahame, though, haven't they? What do you think about this issue of whether a PM, and look, it's still an if Julia Gillard is defeated at this election, but should she have to serve a full 3 years?
Look, as a good party man, I have always thought that if a defeated leader can hang on for 12 to 18 months and take all the odium of that dreadful period and then bring in a new leader halfway through the first term, then that new leader has a better chance of doing the job properly. Otherwise, they're just sort of sacrificed. However, when it comes to real people and real prime ministers and whatnot, the day after the election, if you are beating, you just do not want to go back into the parliament. You've done your bit for the country, and just getting any enthusiasm is really hard. And I would understand, despite what she said, if she gets done, I'd be very surprised if she hung around. I think more importantly, what will Simon Crean do after the election? What will Martin Ferguson do? What will Kevin Rudd do? What will Chris Bowen do? All of those other people, are they going to hang around?
Bruce, what are you reckon? Peter Garrett, Jenny Macklin. A lot of people have been around, Stephen Conroy, who've been around now in government for 2 terms, but in opposition before that for a long time.
I think you've got to be very careful about stripping the front bench of all the experience that's built up over
They're on the back
decades.
bench.
But they will be.
Some of them
either in government or in opposition, they will be on the front bench provided they stay. So I think you've got to be careful about going too far. I mean, one of the criticisms that can be made, I think, of the government was that we didn't have enough older sort of MPs like Crean in there from the beginning, and I think that would have probably made something of a difference.
We're probably getting a bit ahead of ourselves because this election hasn't actually been held yet, let alone lost by Labor, so we don't want to race too far ahead. In fact, I think we're out of time for this afternoon. We'll have plenty of chance, I'm sure, to talk about this more between now and September 14 and beyond. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, great to talk to you both this afternoon. Thank you.
David.
After the break, we're going to return to